Today, our guest is Baluku Mikidadi. He is the coordinator of Africa Program in Technology in Global Affairs. His research focuses on the critical minerals and technology development in Africa. He also works as the director of a Cammann Charitable Trust organization. Welcome, Baluku Mikidadi, for interview. Thank you for you accepting our offer, and we have several questions about Africa because we know due to the tech war between China and the United States, the significance of critical minerals is increasing. China is weaponizing and imposing restrictions on the export of critical minerals to the United States, because United States, Washington also regulates the export of high-tech chips and lithography machines, and also YEDA technologies. So the role of Africa also is important in international relations in technology warfare between the United States and China because of critical mineral bases in the continent. So we have a few questions. How do you think that the US-China and the competition between the China and United States brings to development, prosperity to Africa, or new cycle of warfare, new cycle of civil war in continents? Can you tell us your ideas?
Well, thank you so much, Jurev, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to discuss about the affairs in Africa, and most especially when it concerns US and China. It is very much important to understand that before we can discuss about whether these two developed countries are, causing positive change in Africa or negative change in Africa, it is important to understand the interests of these countries first. So beginning with the United States, first of all, you realize that it is not the first time to have Western influence in Africa, and most especially when it is spearheaded by the US. But it is also important to know that a lot of harm has been done by the West in Africa, and it is also very important to understand that the interests of the US in Africa, though they normally portray to the African continent, most especially through the leaders, they normally portray themselves as very, important people coming to save Africa, and their interest has always remained hidden, despite all that confidence that they come with to convince the African leaders that they are coming to help. So looking at for example, the security department, you will see that they have come here to say that they're coming to help in form of maintaining the security of the African continent or African countries. But I want you to understand that Africa has been experiencing through, civil wars throughout, decades, and now almost a century, when these wars are taking place in the African continent. And the US has not come to Africa now. It came to Africa, in almost around 100 years ago. If you look at, for example, the DRC, you mentioned about DRC, you look about it and you see that Patrice Lumumba, for example, was a very special person to the people of the Democratic Republic of Congo, but through the influence of the US, you know, he was removed, and then you know, Mobutu was installed, and then who was favoring or acting on the interest of the West. So in security-wise, I understand that even though the US come here and say that they are coming to help, you know, I understand that it is not the way how they portray it, you see, because by now, due to the fact that technology has, has advanced, by now we could not be having all these wars in Africa with the presence of the US. So what interest does the US have in Africa? First and foremost, like I've just said, Africa is a continent that is endowed, with rich mineral resources. Almost every country in the African continent, at least, has got a valuable mineral or a valuable resource that is very, very much important to the West. So, like I said, why hasn't the wars ended? Despite the fact that the US is on ground and informing us, telling us that they are coming to help maintain peace, why has the war not ended in Africa? It is simply because the major interest, there are very many interests when you come to political, all the spheres of life, political, economical, and so on. But the major interest that they have here is the African minerals. It is pertaining the African resources. For example, like I've talked or mentioned in the DRC, you can see that a lot of very many people have been displaced because of the wars, very many rebel groups being formed and sponsored, and the government of Congo is not all that helped to say that to see that all these rebel groups, are being neutralized so that peace can be maintained there. So why are they not neutralized? It is because it is taken as an advantage in disguise so that the African resources can be plundered, by most especially the US. Because like it says, it is a world superpower. It has all the technology. It can help in monitoring the movement of all these rebel groups. But what has it done? It has not done anything. And of recent, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the people have risen up and they have started asking all these organizations, the UN and all those foreign troops that have come to Congo for peace, they have asked them to leave simply because the people believe that they have not gone there for peace, but rather to plunder their resources. And they were quoting some incidences that happened, for example, near the military UN bases, where these rebels could come and kill the people. They come and kill the people openly, and then near these UN bases, and then the UN bases could not help. They could not help the people. They could not help to repulse these rebels. So the people rose up and said, no, if they are killing us when you are here, so it means that you came here for other reasons. You have other hidden interests, So they asked them to leave. The government of Congo also asked them to leave. East African community had also deployed, it had also deployed their forces in the DRC. It was also asked to leave, and currently there is SADC from Southern African nations that is trying to work hand in hand with the forces of the DRC to help heal that country. So it is something that is very huge, It is something that is very huge when you talk about the US interest in Africa. The same is happening in West Africa. The same is happening in Somalia, for example. You know, there has been a war for a long period of time. People have been killed, millions of people, and others displaced. You see, and this one actually in Somalia, it has the influence directed of the US, you know, and it has not helped. It has not helped to heal this country. It is always war, year in, year out. You see, and the US presence there has not done much. It has not done much to help to contain this war. So we have always doubted their interests here. They have outlined how they are coming here for peace. They are coming here for economic growth. You see, you can make your own research about Africa. Africa has now just started, you know, trying to grow up economically. But all these previous years, you know, Africa has been, it has been frustrated. Its ideas of economic expansion and growth and development and prosperity has been frustrated. And I'll give a live example of Libya. You can see Libya currently, before the invasion of Libya by the US still. You see, Libya was the fastest, you know, the fastest growing economic country in Africa, and not only in Africa, but also internationally, because in Libya, all the people, the citizens of Libya had benefits that they have not seen in other European countries, even the US itself. You know, like free education, standard education. You know, you look at healthcare systems, very advanced, and agriculture. Libya, remember, Libya is a desert, but Muammar Gaddafi, the late, used to, you know, to come to Uganda here, my country, and take sand, you know, take soil, this fertile soil, and take it up to Libya to start up farming, you see? But all these were destroyed by the US in the form of democracy, you know. And then today, we all know how the people of Libya are suffering, and how they're trying to cross, you know, to go to Europe and then die in the sea. So this is something very unfortunate. And I believe that there has not been so much positive contribution of the US compared to the harm that they have caused. So that's what briefly I can talk about the US. It is something glad when you talk about this, because like I said earlier, the US has not, you know, come here today to Africa. It has been here for a long period of time. It has been here involving itself in, you know, all the political affairs of these African countries. And always where it has been, or where it has been, you know, it has left there all the negativities, you know, war, you know, the suffering, you know, frustration of economic expansion of the countries that they have been there. Like I've cited Libya, I've cited Somalia, you can see where they are. So that is what I can say on the point of the US interests in Africa.
Thank you for your interesting points. As we understand, the United States in Africa is an old factor, and the United Nations basis can't be helping to continent. But there is a new factor in Africa, it's China. The role of China is increasing in continent in critical minerals sector, and China is expanding in Africa. Can you tell us what factors give opportunity for China to become so prevalent in continent? It is interesting for us.
Well, when it comes to China, I understand that China is one of the fastest, developing or already developed countries, and yes, China is now, being received in African countries, and this is mainly due to the infrastructure development projects that it is trying to come up with in order to help Africa to grow. I will give an example of my own country here, Uganda. Currently, you can see that almost 80% of the traders here, they're trading in China, so that there are importing most of the goods from China to Uganda here. Okay, and then when you look at the infrastructural projects, China is trying to help in the construction of the roads, construction of the dams, and also in stabilizing, most of these countries, most especially politically, in avoiding political instabilities, though it has not done, it has not involved itself so much into all those that area of politics compared to economical development. So I believe that there is some kind of countermeasures, most especially from the West, trying to show that China is setting Africa in a debt trap. Personally, I don't believe whether this is true, simply because even the West has been giving loans here, and why is it when it comes to China, when trying to help up Africa, when it is trying to invest, to make huge investments in Africa, which, by the way, are being made on mutual understanding, unlike the West, So they are coming up with a narrative and say China is trying to trap, you see, it is trying to trap African countries into a debt trap. So China, when it comes to all these fears of life, I can't conclude by saying that it has done more harm compared to the West, because through my own research and what I see on the ground, because as I talk now, they're expanding our airport, project, trying to do other projects in Midwestern Uganda, constructing a new airport there, and other road infrastructures currently taking place. So I see China as one of the liberators of some of the African countries. And I believe that this is just starting, as of course the West is being, taken away. The West is being resisted, and then other countries that are seen like friendly countries being allowed in. So I'm still studying where all this is going to, where it is going to end, and whether there will be also some kind of hidden interest and so on. Of recent, China had a meeting, in Beijing, and almost 53 countries from Africa, including the chairperson of the African Union, attended this. So this tries to show you how, important China is becoming to Africa. So like I said, I'm trying to still monitor this, because China is trying now to, it has just started, I can say, to get much interest in Africa. So this is still a developing, strategy. It is still a developing plan that I personally still study and see where it is also going to take us.
Thank you for your ideas. And we continue with the competition between the United States and China in Africa. And our last question. This competition may bring a distraction and polarization in countries between different groups. Some groups are supported by the United States, some groups are supported by China, and it is a very negative effect for governments. Governments meet challenge to provide stability in internal policy and economy, and to avoid international pressure either by the United States or by China. What should you recommend for governments? What African governments should do to avoid to become frontline between Chinese and pro-American interest groups?
Well, thank you so much. What African governments should do, first of all, they have got to understand that they have the capacity, first of all, to develop themselves, through unity. So when they are strong together, and then we're having all these developed countries coming here, it will help the African leaders, to at least get the good out of these people coming, rather than being controlled and manipulated. So the first thing that I ask the African governments is to unite, but also they have to see and compare, because of course when all these developed countries are coming here, they come with their manifestos, they come with the memorandums of understandings, and so I believe that they have to see and which one is on mutual understanding. When you look at the late President John Pombe Magufuli of Tanzania, that's what he did. And if you can now see, Tanzania is one of the fastest growing economies, in Africa. This is what he did. So whoever came in and trying to ask for infrastructural development, he first went through each and every article to see how it benefits the citizen of Tanzania first. But there has been a problem where most of the African leaders, they just welcome without thoroughly understanding the interest of these developed countries when they come here. So that's what I can recommend. See, there has to be unity, and then when there is unity, security will be, tight. And when we have security here, then we can welcome anyone who comes on mutual understanding, well knowing that Africa is united. Africa is developing even on its own. So when they're coming here, they can just come to add on what we already have and what we're already planning for ourselves. But when we are divided, then they take advantage of us. They take the advantage of us and then impose on us their neocolonial interests.
Thank you, Mr. Baluku Mikidadi, for your participation and your fruitful, pointful ideas for our community and our subscribers. We will wait for your next participations and your ideas.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you so much, Jurev. I'm glad to share about my African continent. Africa is a very blessed continent, rich in all spheres of life. Economically, we have the minerals, we have the good climate here, and I pray that Africa in just a few years to come is one, of the fastest growing continent, in the world, competing, internationally with those developed countries.
Thank you.
Welcome.